Hey all, what is up? Keasbey here, and today we're going to be looking at some replays of the blind second Floowandereeze list in action. If you want to check out the full list, check out the link below or in the Floowandereeze playlist. But before we get into all that, don't forget to drop this video a like, subscribe to the channel for even more, and if you want to help us out that little bit extra, check out the link in the description to grab yourself a Keasbey TCG exclusive playmat. Playmats are custom designed by me for the channel, and everything from those goes a long way to helping us out. So we're going to be looking at 2 single games and 2 full matches, and then 1 bonus game that just shows off a little interaction that I mentioned in the profile that I wanted to highlight a bit more. So without further ado, let's jump right into the games. Okay, so the first game that we're going to be looking at is a single against Neos. So our opponent's actually going to set up with a really cool play, and I just wanted to kind of show it off because I thought it was interesting. Also, they're playing Infernal Devicer, which is one of the coolest looking hero cards there is. Also, it may not look like we are playing blind second Floowandereeze based on this hand. I promise that we are. We've just kind of missed all the blind second cards. Fortunately, and it's going to become remarkably relevant once our turn hits, we did hard open Dreaming Town and enough small birds to go off on our own without map. So our opponent set a card called Favorite Contact. They're going to fire it off. Favorite Contact is going to summon Cosmo Neos. Cosmo Neos is basically Utopic Zero Zexal. So now we can't activate cards or effects for the remainder of the turn. Fortunately, we have Dreaming Town, so we can activate our cards or effects on our opponent's turn. We're going to set both Dreaming Town and Dark Ruler No More. We're setting the Dark Ruler No More just on the off chance this is a Cosmic Cyclone. Give our opponent a 50-50 chance at hitting the Dreaming Town instead of 100%. So Cosmo Neos is going to attempt to shuffle itself back into the extra deck, which would have nuked our whole field, but because of Favorite Contact, it's actually not going to be able to, fortunately for us. Our opponent's going to draw Emergency Call, fire it off. They're going to go ahead and grab Stratos. They'll normal summon the Stratos, attempt to pop our back row. We're going to go ahead and chain Dreaming Town, and here we go, all or nothing. It's in the hands of the birds. So with Eaglin, we're going to grab Ariza. We're going to summon Stree here. We're summoning Stree here just on the off chance our opponent does have an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and they're hard holding it for when we're 2 birds committed instead of just 1. Really doesn't matter either way because they have super lethal on board if they stop us at any point here, but why not be careful when we can? We're also going to just get that Liquid Soldier out of the graveyard so that they can't Miracle Fusion with it later. Sorry, I forgot the name Liquid Soldier. So we're going to go into Rubina. With Rubina, we are going to go ahead and grab the Toucan. So with Toucan, we're going to get back our copy of Dreaming Town. And we're going to keep recovering our small birds. And we're going to go into Rise of the Metamark. We're actually going to take the back row out here because Stratos is stuck face down for the rest of the turn. And Cosmo Neos, Brave Neos, and Sunriser can all be handled by M-Pen if our opponent decides to attack into them. Plus their effects are going to be offline because they have to flip back up into face-up attack position. And we're going to just tuck Ryza back into our hand. So we're getting all our small birds just in case our opponent does attack 3 times. We need 1 bird for next turn. And our opponent's going to go for it. So they will protect with Neos Fusion. We'll just protect M-Pen again. We probably should have honestly held these 2 birds to have been the last ones we banished, but it really doesn't matter because we have map, 2 other birds, and these will be easily recovered. But just if you want to nitpick my gameplay right there. And at this point, because our opponent's life points are where we're at, we can actually go for game from here. So we're going to send that so that we can recover it with Toucan. Grab that back, grab the Eaglin. And with the Eaglin, we're going to go ahead and grab Rubina. Well, Rubina's going to recover herself, but at this point our opponent will surrender. But basically we were working towards clearing out our opponent's board and going in for game from there. Okay, so the next game we're going to be looking at is against Ishizu Naturia Vernisylph. So this is a really cool deck. Both Naturia and Vernisylph do get a lot of use out of the Ishizu stuff, and it can end on some pretty interesting boards. So this is looking a lot more like a blind second Floowandereeze list. We've got our Dark Ruler No More, we've got our Harpy's Feather Duster, and we've got enough stuff to play once we clear out all possible threats. So let's watch what happens. So our opponent's going to mill, nothing particularly relevant, got hit. They're going to keep going off. They're going to make Naturia Beast, which would be a problem if not for Dark Ruler No More. And they're going to make Mole Cricket, which can tribute itself to go into a monster that does negate effects. So while the current field doesn't contest with monster effects as well, they can very easily swap into something that will. So we are going to fire off Dark Ruler No More just to prevent that from happening, and now the Naturia Beast is offline and we're free to go off. So unfortunately, to end on both Barrier Statue and M-Pen, which is where we want to be based on this board, we do kind of have to play a little bit low. The order we're doing things doesn't particularly matter because our opponent has no interactions. So we're going to go into M-Pen from here. M-Pen, we're going to grab Dreaming Town, and we'll drop the Barrier Statue. Okay, so we're going to clear the Naturia Beast because that is the more threatening card, and we'll go ahead and clear the Stink Bug just because we can. Mole Cricket is offline because of Barrier Statue of the Stormwind, so our opponent rips an Agido off the top. They're going to fire off Gravekeeper's Trap, sending the Agido to the graveyard, forcing us to use Dreaming Town early to ensure that our Eaglin search for the Ryza does go off properly. So they're going to grab a Vernisylph. The Vernisylph is more or less offline also because of Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. So Agido's going to trigger Chain Link 1. Eaglin is going to trigger Chain Link 2. And Stree that is banished will be Chain Link 3. So I have to point out we do misplay here. It doesn't end up mattering, but it is really important to point out when you're playing against any form of a Ishizu deck. We lucked out. Our opponent did not mill any of the shufflers off the top. Had they, Chainlink 1 would have been, or Chainlink 1 would have been Stree, and then they could have gone Chainlink 2, any of the cards to shuffle whatever we're targeting with Stree back, cutting us off from being able to summon the Ryza after the Stree resolves. So we really should have summoned Rabina there. We lucked out, but I had to point that out. Be careful with Stree when you're playing against anything with the Ishizu support in it. So we're going to get rid of the M-Pen, we're going to grab the 2 comeback, and we're just going to go straight into Ryza. With Ryza, we're going to spin back the only card that can hit over Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. We know that our opponent has the Vernisylph in hand and can't do anything with it. They're going to set it and proceed to surrender. Okay, so for our first match, we're going to be looking at a best of 3 versus Spright. So our opponent has opened up absolutely everything they could ever want. We have also opened up absolutely everything we could ever want, with the exception of a small bird, but because we have 6 POC cards, we did find one, and we're going to get an extra card off the top, so we have 4 cards to find any level 1 Floowandereeze monster. So our opponent's going to already have 2 monster negates online. They're setting up to make the Toad. There's the Elf. And there's the Toad, and we are going to go into our turn. We're going to fire off the Dark Ruin No More here. We can safely assume neither of these can interact with spells and traps, otherwise they probably would have stopped the Dark Ruin No More. And we're going to go to the battle phase and fire off Evenly Matched, also letting us know that these probably aren't a starter, because most likely, unless they've already used it. No, the Carrot's already there, so unless they're playing 2 Carrot, we actually don't know if either of those are a starter. So they are going to attempt to negate with Totally Awesome, which is negated, so it's not going to matter, but that is going to let them get a Nimble Beaver for next turn. So technically, we probably should have fired off Lightning Storm here first, but we're pretty sure this can't interact with spells and traps based on everything we've done so far, so it's fine to do it this way. And what do you know, there's the Eaglin that we need to start up our plays. So now we're going to fire off Lightning Storm just because. And we are going to activate map, and at this point our opponent will go ahead and surrender. Let's take a look at game 2. Alright, so going into game 2, we're going to highlight something that can happen when you're playing the blind second list, or any blind second list that can smokescreen into a going first list. And that's what happens when you side incorrectly. So I made the guess that after seeing evenly matched Lightning Storm and Dark Ruler No More, our opponent might assume that that was our game plan because Spright is a going first list, and then make us go first, siding in all of their going second stuff into our going second stuff, and we would have a lot of dead cards in our hand on our first turn. Well, we sided into all of our going first stuff, and our opponent has opted to go first. Our hand's not great either way, and our opponent's got more than everything that they could ever want. So they're going to go into Carrot, go into Red, go into Jet. With Jet, they're going to grab Smasher, which is already an answer to the map and Stree play that we have. So with Angler, they're going to go into Beaver, Spright, and get Swap Frog, so they're going to set up to make a Totally Awesome. We're going to fire off the DD Crow here just to remove 1 point of interaction, since either the Spright Red has to tribute a Swap Frog and then they don't get Toad, or they have to tribute a Carrot and they have to decide whether they want Carrot or to bring Toad back a second time with Elf. So kind of at this point, we're getting the most use out of DD Crow as we possibly could. And they're going to go into the Toad, set Smasher, and pass back to us. We're going to pull Pot of Prosperity off the top. We're going to go ahead and fire it off here, and our opponent's going to chain Totally Awesome, and we will surrender because, again, we know the Smasher is an answer for our map. Let's go to game 3. Okay, so we are going to elect to go first. We've decided to go first, and we've drawn a pretty good hand for that. A lot of good power cards, but not great on the starters. We're going to weirdly set 3 first. I'm not sure why we do that, and then activate the Eaglin. Our opponent's going to chain Ash here. We're just going to let it happen. Using Advent here won't really accomplish anything. Funny enough, and I have to mention it, if our opponent had gone Imperm first, then we chained Advent, and then they changed Ash to the Advent, we would have probably lost the game, as we would have ended our turn with just Anti-Spell, Dreaming Town, Featherstorm, and an M-Pen in hand that was not doing anything, since we would not have had a second small bird to go into. Fortunately, they did not, and they held the Imperm. So we're going to fire off Anti-Spell here. They're going to activate Sprite Starter, and with that, they're going to go into a Spright Blue. On the activation of Spright Blue, we're going to go ahead and fire off Featherstorm. So they're going to special summon Carrot and go into an Xyz monster to attempt to set up for a double Isaiah's play. We're going to fire off Advent of Adventure here. Fortunately, our opponent does not have another Ash. And then we're going to fire off Dreaming Town as our opponent attempts to leave the main phase. And from here, our opponent will surrender, but we more or less had the game from this point, even through the one Imperm that they had left over in their hand. Okay, so our last match is going to be against Tearlaments Ishizu. We have lost the die roll, which as a going second deck is exactly where you want to be, so that your opponent may not necessarily be expecting you to drop Lightning Storms and evenly matches on them. Our hand's pretty good, our opponent's hand is remarkably good, and unfortunately Tearlaments, the moment they see you mill a Floowandereeze card, can change up their end board to adapt to that, ending on 1 or 2 Dragostapelias, or maybe even a Millennium Eyes Restrict, which seems to be something that they like to make against me specifically. Fortunately for us, our opponent has actually missed every card that mills from the deck, so they are going into the turn blind, ending on a Rukalos. We do know the Crime and we do know the Celiac at this point, so yeah, let's see what we do. So because our opponent doesn't know we're on Floowandereeze, we're going to fire off Dark Ruler No More here, despite the fact that neither of these monsters actually affect us. The reason that we're firing it off is because we want it to eat the Crime so that we can push through our evenly matched. And it ends up working out. Unfortunately, they're going to send the Kelbeck, which is going to mill from the top of our deck, showing our opponent that we are in fact on Floowandereeze and giving them enough material to eventually climb up to a Dragostapelia. However, Dragostapelia does not address the evenly match that they don't know we have. Also, fortunately for us, they made the Dragostapelia in attack mode. So really, really cool play on the part of our opponents here. They're going to fire off Super Poly to make a Kit Colorless with these 2 monsters. And now the Rukalos and the Meru are going to go off. So they're going to get to do that on a new chain. After evenly match has resolved, we're going to fire a Pot of Prosperity here. So we are going to go ahead and fire off the map. So we're going to play this and it's going to look a little bit weird, but it was kind of a lot of weird out thinking and thinking through circles. So let's see how it goes. So we're going to banish the Eaglin to make sure that we get it no matter what, and summon the Rabina. Our opponent likely is going to prioritize the Eaglin to negate with the Dragostapelia because they don't want us to get into M-Pen. So with the Rabina, we're actually going to search Stree. We're searching Stree for 2 reasons. A, we don't want to use the Eaglin yet because we really do want that to resolve. B, they have other options to use on the Stree if they so choose to, but Stree is such a low priority for them right now, and we're not going to target anything important in their graveyard to give them any sort of incentive to activate the Mudoria, but it is always a chance. If they do and the Stree doesn't resolve, we'll just normal summon M-Pen with our game mechanic normal summon and kind of have to adjust a little bit from there because we're not going to have a way to clear the Dragostapelia. Fortunately for us, our opponent lets the Stree resolve. We hard opened an M-Pen, so we didn't actually need the Eaglin, and now that M-Pen is live, Dragostapelia is offline, and the Shuffler no longer matters. So we are going to go into Eaglin, and we are going to grab Apex Avion. We're going to activate Unexplored Winds, and with our game mechanic normal summon, we're going to clear the Dragostapelia via Unexplored Winds, putting Apex Avion on the board, and setting 1 and passing. So our opponent's going to fire off Mudoria, shuffle some cards back. So our opponent is going to fire off Foolish Burial here. I feel fairly safe in assuming they don't have Shiren in the hand, because if they attempted to special summon it and we Apexed Avian'd it, it would have gotten to resolve its fusion effect, which could have become a problem for us if they made a defense position Dragus Tapalia. So I think we're okay letting this resolve and saving the Apex Avian for the one unknown card in hand. Plus, if they're going to send a Tearlaments monster to attempt to fusion someone with this, we have a different answer in firing off Dreaming Town and going to Rabina. So they did exactly what we thought they were going to do, going into a Tearlaments to attempt to fusion summon. Fortunately, because they are turn player, they are going to be Chain Link 1, and our relevant Rabina is going to be Chain Link 2, and we are going to summon Barrier Statue, causing this to fizzle. Unfortunately, to prevent them from going off like that, we do kind of have to sacrifice Map and Apex Avian to their board. So they're going to clear both of those. And fortunately, the last card in hand was Kelbeck. And again, we assume that they didn't have Shiren in hand because they sent it with Foolish Burial instead of just trying to use it from hand. So any of the other Tearlaments monsters, they would have had to normal summon, which would have played into Map. So with Map, we're going to go into Eaglin, and we're going to go ahead and get Ryza. And this is going to be one of the rare times where I'm actually going to leave Ryza on the field. We're going to tuck that Apex Avian right back on top of the deck for use with Unexplored Winds next turn. Send the Kelbeck back to the hand since it's already normal summoned, and get the Guru off the field so our opponent doesn't get to draw with it. And from here, we more or less have game, however we want to get to it. So with Rabina, we are going to go ahead and grab any bird. Doesn't matter, we have all 4 in rotation. And Rabina can grab herself, by the way. I don't talk about that enough. It's really cool that it can do that. So because we sent Rukalos to the graveyard via an effect, it can actually revive, but that's absolutely fine because it can only do that once, and we still have Apex Avian in hand to send it away a second time. We have more than lethal on board, and our opponent's going to go ahead and surrender from there. Let's go look at game 2. All right, so going into game 2, our opponent has made us go first. However, unlike in the Spright game where we decided to go first and our opponent made us go second, we're absolutely ready, as you can see, with Featherstorm being in the main deck. So we've drawn basically all gas. All we really need is a small bird, and we've got 6 cards to find one. Honestly, even if we missed the small bird, we did have Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds already in hand. I just didn't want to Advent it away, so we're going to go ahead and grab Eaglin. So with Eaglin, we are going to go ahead and start our combo off. So with Rabina, we're going to go ahead and grab a Toucan because we are setting up to summon Empen twice in one turn. So we're going to get rid of that Empen in order to go ahead and grab another one. So with Toucan, we're going to grab the Empen we banished and summon it again. So because our opponent made us go first, obviously we're assuming they decided to go second, I'm actually going to hold the Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds in my hand so that I can use it responsively when they attempt to do their plays, versus leaving it on field for if they drew something like a Dark Ruler no more, or a Lightning Storm, or even a Raigeki, and they could clear it and then go off without me having Barrier Statue access. So our opponent's going to fire off the field spell, use it to grab Shiren, activate Shiren. We are going to chain Dreaming Town, dropping Barrier Statue, and now Shiren is going to go ahead and resolve without effect because it can't special summon. So our opponent does have Sphere Mode, but we only have 2 monsters, and they have just committed their normal summon for the turn, so that Sphere Mode is now offline. So we are going to go ahead and summon Toucan. With Toucan, we're going to grab back Rabina, and we're actually going to leave Necro Banshee on the field and send the field spell and Toucan away to summon Empen. So the reason we're not going to send Necro Banshee is if we send it, our opponent's just going to immediately fire off the Necro Banshee, get a Zombie World, which we do have Feather Duster to address, but why even bother having to address it when if our opponent waits a little bit too long, we can just flip it face down with Dreaming Town, which is exactly what is going to happen. And at this point, we are just going to go ahead and continue our plays, feeling safe that our opponent doesn't have any negation because they probably would hit Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds with it instead of normal summoning Necro Banshee, but we are just going to end on an Apex Avian just in case, and from this point, our opponent will go ahead and surrender. Okay, so this is one additional bonus game that I wanted to show, not so much for the gameplay, but more to show how Unexplored Winds and Rise of the Meta Monarch have a really cool interaction against Tearlaments Ishizu specifically, allowing you to very quickly and easily recover milled cards from your graveyard. So our opponent's going to start milling. Unfortunately, I don't know if you caught it, it was very fast. We did lose Dreaming Town early, which is not good, because you always want to be having access to that via Empen. There's actually two ways we could recover the Dreaming Town. One of them would be perform a Tribute Summon and then get Toucan on the field, or we could do what we're going to end up doing on our next turn. So seeing that we're on Floowandereeze, our opponent's going to consolidate everything into a 4-mana Appaloosa. Fortunately for us, we do have Dark Ruler no more. We could have also used Advent of Adventure, sent the Rabina, and played under it via Chain Blocks as well. So they're going to fire off the Shuffler early, which is going to make everything we're doing even easier because Ryza can just target freely in the graveyard now. So we are going to go ahead and do some standard Floowandereeze stuff. We accidentally sent a second Rabina with map. Did not mean to do that. So with M-Pen, we're just going to grab Unexplored Winds here because we can. We're going to summon Barrier Statue, so we're going to fire off Unexplored Winds. We're actually going to go ahead and just use M-Pen as the entire tribute for Ryza and not use Unexplored Winds. We want to leave this on the field because we're going to blank our opponent's next draw with it, and since we're not dealing damage anyway, there's absolutely no reason to not just attack over Appaloosa with Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. Plus, putting Ryza back in our hand is going to give us a material that we need for Unexplored Winds to use the Mulligan effect. So let's put the Dreaming Town right back on top of the deck, and now with Unexplored Winds, put Ryza at the bottom of the deck and redraw the Dreaming Town immediately. And from here, we more or less have control over the game. Our opponent's going to reset the Gravekeeper's Trap. We're going to set up to respin it back to the top with Ryza and win on our next turn, but our opponent will surrender before then. We are just going to extend a little bit here to make it easier to play on our next turn, but this is where our opponent surrenders. Alright, so that has been a showcase of Blind Second Floowandereeze in action. I've really been enjoying this deck. I like how it plays. I like the weird mind games that it can sometimes create in side decking, like we saw with the Tearlaments Ishizu match, and like we saw, unfortunately, with the Spright match in Game 2. But if you like it yourself and you want to try it out, definitely check out the deck profile linked in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for even more, and as always, if you want to help us out that little bit extra, check in the link in the description to grab yourself a Keasbey TCG exclusive playmat, and I will catch y'all later.